Hi, everybody. Good morning, evening, and good night to everybody on this little chat meetup, depending on where in the world you are. I've been invited by Zoopla Tech to host this little test automation meetup. Today, we should have, I will have, should I say, two great speakers for you today. One that is Gáspár Nagy. Hopefully, I'm pronouncing his name correctly. He Fair enough, he's the creator of SpecFlow, and he will have a nice little chat on the whole BDD, BDD setup and the way things work in that world. And my other speaker today would be Larissa Rosochansky, and I apologize if I pronounce her name as well wrong. She will be having a little chat to you again about building a quality engineering chapter, and all about the pitfalls and to avoid and the best practices to follow. So as we go along, that would be how we are structured. In saying that, any questions you have for myself or for either Gaspar or Larissa, you just type it into the chat, and the moderator will pick that up for us as we go along. A little about myself. I'm the test automation architect at Oxford University Press, and I'm the creator of klassi-js. It's a JavaScript test automation framework. So, as it stands, so I'm here sitting down in good old sunny stroke rainy London. Where are you guys coming in from at this point? All right, so we have South Florida. Oh, good old South Florida. I'm sure it's sunny on that side of the world, as it always is. It always is. I miss the nice little beaches down that side. Good, good, good. Yeah, we have somebody from in Turkey. Yeah, we're looking good. Yeah, we're looking pretty good. Yeah, so let me see how far. Like I say, I'm sitting in London, so let me see how far and wide we're reaching, and how far and wide we're reaching, and let's see, how we get as the days go along. Yeah, of course, I know good old sunny and warm South Florida, the best place in the world at this moment. Well, actually, the best place in the world all the time. So yeah, as people join in, and before I introduce our first speaker, just a little bit. Welcome, India. See you there. A little bit about what I do in a sense, and about klassi-js. Like I say, klassi-js is a test automation framework in JavaScript with WebDriver IO sitting under the hood, and it is designed out of a particular little need. So it does little things like UI testing, API testing, some visual testing as well inside there, and a little bit of compatibility. So it's just making up the time and getting involved and turning back to the community. Besides doing this, having a chat with very good people. Um, so like I say, my first speaker today, I would have a little thing about him. My first speaker today is my speaker today is Gáspár Nagy. He would pronounce it better than me, I'm sure. He's the creator of SpecFlow, and he's also a BDD coach and trainer for test automation. So without further ado, did I pronounce the name correct, Gáspár?
Well, that's an unfair thing because it's a name that is impossible to pronounce by anyone who is not Hungarian. So I would say obviously not, but you tried, and that's the important thing. The correct Hungarian pronunciation would be Gáspár Nagy.
No, wow, I wouldn't even try.
Yeah, that's it.
I wouldn't try. Well, I mean, since that you're there, and I hope all the good folks are ready for you. So, people, without further ado, I hand you over to Gaspar.
Okay, so hopefully I shared my screen. Could you please confirm that you see that? Okay, now you should be able to see it as far as I see. Okay, so welcome everyone. For me, this is an evening, 5 p.m. I'm joining from Budapest, Hungary. And basically, the talk that I have chosen, or the topic that I have chosen for this for the today's session, is how to write better BDD scenarios, and what kind of small tricks and practices could be applied if you would like to reach this goal. Just a few words about myself. You have heard from Larry that I'm most known by creating SpecFlow. SpecFlow is basically the .NET port of Cucumber, or the .NET variation of Cucumber that I did now it's almost 13 years ago. And since then, I was dealing with behavior-driven development. I was working as a BDD coach, or I am working as a BDD coach and BDD trainer since then. And I did quite many projects, on-site projects, so keep my hands dirty with coding and participating in the project-related activities where we were doing BDD. And obviously there I have seen many interesting challenges. Some of them we were able to solve. There were some that we were not able to solve at that time, but we have figured out how to do that better for the next one. And basically this talk and just my other activities that I do in the BDD space, like my talks, my trainings, and the coaching that I do is based on that experience. And I'm keep trying to be in the practical side as well. So I also have some side projects, and I'm also active in the open source community, so that I keep the practical details. Basically, two resources that I was contributing to that might be interesting for you if you are interested in behavior-driven development. The first one is a newsletter. The newsletter is called BDD Addict, and you can find it at the bddaddict.com URL. This is absolutely free thing, and basically the newsletter is a compilation of interesting articles and news that I have read in a particular month about BDD. So it's not necessarily my comment, even though that I'm providing a small teaser for every single article. If you are interested to see some selected articles, blog posts that are really good and deal with this topic, feel free to subscribe. Or if you go to bddaddict.com, then you can also see the past issues as well. So that's one thing that I can recommend. And the other thing that it's a great project that we started with Seb Rose. We wanted to make, or we are doing a book series about BDD. We have two books ready. The first one is called Discovery. This is related to the requirement management part of BDD, and the other is Formulation. And we are working on the third book. If you are interested to read about these topics in a book style, feel free to go to bddbooks.com, and you will see all the links to the different channels, how you can buy. The Discovery book is also available as an audio book. And the latest news was that now we have also a Japanese translation. So if someone joining from Japan and would like to read about the Discovery in your own language, now you can do that. So that's about myself. And when to get into the topic that I planned for today, just compiled a quick agenda. So these are the topics that I would like to talk about today. Maybe not everyone is aware of what behavior-driven development, or BDD in short, is. So I thought that I would start with a kind of 5-minute BDD summary. Let's see whether don't do the stopwatch. Maybe I will miss that, but a short BDD summary. Let's say it like that. And then I would like to talk about this term formulation, which is about writing BDD scenario. What the BDD scenarios, what does that really means, and how should we imagine that? And then we will talk about some practical details of how good BDD scenarios might look like, and there we will see the so-called brief principles. You will see by the end of the talk what this keyword means in this particular context. And after the wrap up, I hope that I will have some time also for Q&A. So if you will have some questions, then please just write them into the chat, or what is the right format for that. And then at the end of the talk, I will try to answer as many of them as possible. So that's the plan, and I hope you are ready so that we can move forward. So as I said, the first thing that I would like to start with is a kind of short BDD summary. And maybe many of you have heard about behavior-driven development, even if you haven't really used that yet. And typically when people are asked about BDD, the first thing that came to their mind, and this is absolutely fine, is a BDD scenario. A BDD scenario that uses the given, when, and then keywords and some additional things. And basically, that, for example, the one that you see on the screen, I think a BDD scenario is one of the central elements of BDD itself. But I would like to see a little bit behind that, and we will come back to that a little bit later as well, why I do that, and try to see what is a BDD scenario is doing, and what is our goal with BDD, and why BDD scenarios might be useful. For that, I would like to use a metaphor of a bridge. This wasn't my idea. Actually, Gojko Edžić had a great book called Bridging the Communication Gap quite many years ago. And that's the metaphor that he was using. And that's what I also would like to use. So I would like to see or show you the scenarios, the BDD scenarios, as some sort of bridge that bridges the two sides of what? That's the question. So what is on the two sides of this bridge? We can say that on one side of the bridge, there are the requirements. Of course, we are in a software development process. The requirements are coming in some form from the business. So that's on one side of the bridge. And on the other side, there is the application that we would like to, that we need to implement the solution for that particular problem. So we can say that the problem and the solution, or the requirement and the created application, is at the two sides of that bridge. And somehow the scenarios are sitting in the middle. But why do we need to bridge these two things? Why is there a gap between these two different elements? And what does making a bridge between these two really mean? And of course, there could be multiple different answers, but maybe the two most important motivation for making this bridge might be that from the requirement side, so from the business perspective, what we would like to achieve, that we would like to make the requirements testable. So we would like to have a requirement coverage. We would like to make sure that the test that the team is doing is really testing the requirements and not just the code. And on the other side, from the delivery side, we could make the wish or the desire that we would like to make our tests better understandable. In a typical project, the tests are created in your programming language, and especially if they are more complex system or integration tests, sometimes they are really hard to understand, and making them understandable is a valid goal. So, and well, actually, these two things are the two main motivation from the two sides that ends up for the need of a BDD scenario and making a bridge between these two. If we are considering, or if you consider a BDD scenario, then I'm pretty sure that most of you would think that a BDD scenario is basically an automated test. And this is true. So BDD scenario is a different form of a test. But it looks like that if you just think of the BDD scenarios as a form of an automated test, you will see that there are plenty of other tools that you could use to express a test that might perform better than doing the BDD scenarios and using Cucumber or SpecFlow to be able to automate them. So if only the automated testing would be the purpose for these scenarios, then probably you would be able to find better tools than that. So actually the reason why still it makes sense to use BDD scenarios because those scenarios are solving multiple purposes, and having an automated or being an automated test is just one purpose, but there are two others as well. On one hand, the BDD scenarios are also, we usually say that they are illustrating the requirements or they are the illustration of the requirements. What does that mean? That by reading the scenario, you can have a better picture what the requirements really were, and that's how they can build some useful information on that. And on the other hand, the BDD scenarios can also serve as a documentation of the behavior, especially in agile projects where the documentation had to be reconsidered, or maybe not the classic documentation forms are existing or they don't make that much sense, but we still need to need some sort of documentation of preserving what we agreed to and preserving what we have achieved for that. So that's the three purposes that the BDD scenario is basically solving. It's an illustration for a requirement, it's an automated test, and it's a documentation of the behavior. Of course, you don't need all three purposes at the same time. So typically in the implementation phase when you are creating your new functionality, you are more interested in having the scenario as an illustration of the requirement, because this is how we learn about the requirements, and having an automated test to verify whether we really reach that. And maybe on the maintenance phase, these scenarios will become part of the regression tests, and then that they are automated tests and they have documented the behavior. That becomes more important. But altogether, all three are so to say equally important. What you can see from that, and I hope that you already start feeling that definitely testing is an important aspect of BDD, and it's an important aspect of the scenarios, but they are more. BDD is not only testing. If you just consider the testing aspect, then probably you would find better tools for that. So basically, that's the central element, the concept for a BDD scenario. So if you would really like to, at the end, define what behavior-driven development is, then, I mean, there are multiple definitions out there that you could choose from, but that's probably the simplest one. So we could say that behavior-driven development is about understanding, documenting, and verifying the business requirements through illustrative scenarios. So basically, that says that BDD primarily targeting on the business requirements, the functional requirements. And what we would like to do with the functional requirements, we would like to have a better understanding of them. We would like to document how we understood them. And of course, we would like to verify whether our solution is really fulfilling those requirements or not. And as we said, these scenarios, these illustrative scenarios, will be the central elements of that to be able to achieve that. When you put this into practice, so when a team starts to adapt or adapted the BDD method, then at the end you will see that you will need to do three different kind of practices, three different kind of activities to be able to achieve that. The first activity is related to the understandability of the requirements. That's what in BDD we usually call the discovery process. So discovery process would be just that how we are building up the shared understanding by collaborating on the requirements and having some structured conversations on that. Once we have these conversations, once we were discussing about the requirements, that's the time where we would need to really write them down into scenarios. That's what usually called the formulation practice. Basically, when we are just documenting the results as scenarios. This is going to be the topic of the today's talk. And of course, once we have the scenarios, we would like to automate them so that we can verify whether our system is really fulfilling those or not. So that's basically the three key practices of BDD: discovery, formulation, automation. And as I said, today we are going to focus on the formulation practice. So I mean, in a high level, we already mentioned what formulation is. We were basically saying that formulation is some sort of activity when we document the domain examples as BDD scenarios using these magical give and then keywords. But whenever you try to do it in practice, you will see that as easy it sounds, oh, well, I just need to write down the requirements. There are some tricks and pitfalls to avoid. And therefore, it makes sense to dig into that a little bit more in detail. And I don't know how many of you are actually testers here, but many of the BDD practitioners, or sometimes the movement to turn into BDD comes from the QA side, and many testers are involved in this process, which is generally very good. But therefore, I found it important to make a contrast. What is the difference between this formulation BDD activity, as we defined earlier, with the classic test writing or test design that usually the testers are doing? And this is not a better or worse thing. These are just differences. So there is no. Both of them are important activities, but they are somehow different. So I just listed a few key points that you might want to do when you do test design and test writing, and what kind of things you are focusing on when you do formulation. So definitely when you do a classic test design or test writing, then what you need to do, you need to analyze the business requirements to be able to see what kind of tests you would like to define. You probably will do some magical testing things as well, like defining the equivalence group of input and any other testing techniques. You are maybe go ahead and try to find some edge cases, some special situations. Probably you will need to deal a lot with test data. You will need to gather required test data, and at the end, you will need to write the test script itself in the form of your testing tool. Maybe this will be really a script language. Maybe it will be just several lines in an Excel sheet, whatever your tool is supporting. On the other hand, when we do formulation, formulation is somewhat different. Typically, at the time when we are doing formulation, then business rules, so generally the requirements, have been already discovered or discussed through the discovery session. You remember we have discovery, formulation, automation, and now we are at the second stage already. So we don't really need to do detailed business requirement analysis, because that has been already done during the discovery session. And on the discovery session, we have identified some sort of key examples. I will show a few examples for that so that you can see. So anyway, that kind of work have been already done. So what we really need to do is that what we collected as a rough examples or notes in the discovery session, we need to put them into properly written formal way, so that that tools like Cucumber and SpecFlow can use that, and that it works as a long-term documentation. So obviously we will need to review the wording and many other things. So that's these are the key differences, and from that you see that these are quite different things. So typically formulation is absolutely different than classic test writing or test design would look like. So again, I was trying to collect some of the typical activities that you do during formulation. So what kind of things you are usually do. And again, just remember that this is all about documentation and not automation. So, for example, you are identifying context, action, and outcome. So identifying what is a given, what is a when, and what is a then. So maybe in a discussion during formulation, you get to you get to that sentence that, oh, is this preparation step is really important, or to be able to get the expected outcome, or we just or actually the expected outcome would be also valid without that. So questioning some of the preparation steps, that's very typical in a formulation session. Sometimes we just review or fix business terminology that are used. Maybe during the discovery session we used client and user randomly. Now we would need to finalize how we are actually calling these things. obviously, we would need to turn these scenarios into proper English sentences. So maybe just word ordering, grammar, tenses, whatever else. So maybe in a discussion, you would say that, oh, actually, this thing has happened earlier. So maybe we should use a past tense to emphasize that was something earlier happening in the process of execution. You might want to reuse phrasing styles from other scenarios or even complete steps. So maybe in a discussion you say that, oh, I remember that we have already described a similar problem. Let's look at that. Let's see how we expressed it on that feature, and maybe we can reuse that here as well. So that's absolutely a usual kind of discussion during a formulation session. And maybe just the last one. So we also might want to make sure that these steps that we have listed make a logical sequential flow, that this and this and this happens after that. So that kind of discussions can also happen. So the result of this formulation session, and as I said, these were some typical things that you might see in a formulation discussion. The result of them is a BDD scenario. And I think typically the BDD scenarios are very self-explanatory, and I don't want to go into the details of the syntax. But what you can see is that typically a scenario is consisting of a name or title that's identifying the scenarios. It can have multiple given steps which are describing the context. Sometimes if we have multiple given steps, just to make the readability nicer, we can use the end keyword, just the continuation of the previous step. So in this case, this scenario actually have two given steps, one when and one when step. The when step, which is really initiating the behavior or just performing the action that is triggering the outcome, and then steps which are describing the expected outcome. We will talk about that later as well, but we would like to have these scenarios focused, and therefore good BDD scenarios have only one when step. That might be surprising for you because maybe your scenarios have multiple when steps. We will come back to that a little bit later, or we can continue this discussion on in the Q&A. But at the end, if you follow the general practices and guidelines, then this is what you should see. The keywords right now, we are seeing them in English, but obviously as they are describing the business intention, the business requirements, they should be in the language what the business is really using. So if you are working, let's say in a German domain, then obviously you would write your scenarios with the German language, or if you would be in Hungarian, then definitely you could use the Hungarian or keywords for that. So it's supporting more than 70 different languages. So definitely you will find yours within that. The scenarios that you have, or the scenario that you have seen, are formed in a format which is called the Gherkin syntax. It's a little bit silly name, but yeah, that's how it is. Basically, the Gherkin syntax is what defines these keywords, like the given, when, then keyword, the scenario keywords, and many others. So basically, this is describing a business-readable specification language using these keywords. And actually, it was developed as part of the Cucumber project, but then promoted to a kind of tool-agnostic format. And now there are many different tools that are able to understand the Gherkin syntax, and you are able to use that. And generally, which is again sounds to be a little bit weird if you are only seeing it as a testing platform, but it's on purpose simple. So it's lacks of programming constructs like conditions, variables, loops, whatsoever, and that is on purpose because we would like to keep the specification, keep the requirements somewhat clean. Okay, so this is a little bit complex picture that is describing the flow, how you are understanding the requirements, how you finally turn them into a user story. I don't want to go too much into the details of that because part of that is part of the discovery process. That is not the focus point of this talk today. But basically, the thing is that that whenever you are considering a new user story or story to be implemented, then what you are typically doing, you are just listing all those acceptance criteria. In BDD, we call these things rules, just a nicer word for the same thing. So you are describing the rules that the user story should fulfill. And during the discovery session, basically you are just coming up a couple of examples that are just describing how that particular rule is actually performed. And when we are doing the formulation, and this is what I said earlier, that it basically just takes the existing knowledge that we have gathered during the discovery session. What we are basically doing, we are taking these examples and just turning them into properly written BDD scenarios. So that's the formulation session. And once the scenarios are formulated, we can go ahead and start coding the rule, implementing the rule in the production system in a way that at the end, the scenario will document how we understood the rule. And the scenario can also, if it's automated, can also verify whether what we have coded down is really working as we expected. So basically, it just finally makes this connection between the two sides. It's not sitting on the solution side, it's not sitting on the problem side, but somewhere in the middle, and it just has the necessary call-out points for both sides. Again, I said that the discovery is not the major topic of this talk. This is an example. This is something called an example map. If you are interested to learn more about the discovery, then I really recommend you to Google for example mapping. That's a great technique. Basically, what you see here is you see that in an imagined user story of a Stack Overflow-like application, basically you see that we have identified 4 different rules, and for each rule we were coming up with 1 or 2 examples. So that was the result of the discovery session. And now as we get to formulate, actually I was just zooming into one of these examples. Maybe one of these examples would look like that. This is some suggestion related user story. Let's imagine that we have 2 questions in the system. What is Specflow? What is Cucumber? If you are start asking best Specflow practices, then we should suggest the first one, what is Specflow? That's the concrete example. As you can see, this is a very simple thing. It doesn't have to be complex because we have multiple such examples, and they all together help you to imagine how the application would look like. And in the formulation session, this is what we take. This is the input for the formulation session, and this is what we turn into a more proper BDD scenario. As you can see, now I have done the scenario for this particular example. And if you're just scanning through the scenario, another question contains the same word. Given there are questions asked as what is Specflow, what is Cucumber, and the user is authenticated. When the user starts asking the question, what is the best Specflow practices, then the suggestion list should be what is Specflow. As you can see, the meaning of the 2 things is really the same. So actually, we just used the knowledge that we have discovered during the discovery session, but now we have turned it into a format that is first of all nicely written, or at least more nicely written, and something that Cucumber or Specflow can pick up and process. So that's how you can see a concrete example of how such formulation activity is done. I would like to highlight, because this is going to be important for us later on, but that the example that we were considering were an example of a particular rule, and not just an example generally for the user story. And documenting that rule is also super important. In the earlier versions of Gherkin, there was no easy way or no structured way to document the rule. But now, in the modern versions of Cucumber and Specflow, basically there is a new rule keyword. That's what you see here on the top of my scenario, where you can document what was the rule that this scenario was belonging to, and definitely it makes sense to document that one, because together with the rule, the thing is much better understandable, or it's going to work much better as a documentation than without that. Then we would need to just basically reverse engineer what the scenario wanted to really specify. So that's basically the core understanding of what formulation is. So basically what we have seen so far is that that we would like to document these examples using the given when then keyword, that we are using the Gherkin format that defines these keywords in multiple different languages. And it's an important detail that that these business rules or the acceptance criteria, if you better like to call it like that, should be also documented together with the scenarios. Okay, so that's what we have seen so far. Now, after we have seen some summary of formulation, I would like to, this is going to be the rest of the talk, I would like to introduce you to these magical brief principles, which are essentially some sort of golden rules of formulation. So rules that or principles that BDD practitioners have been collecting in the last years, and which are really important and really make sense to follow. And I would like to, I could of course drop out the definition of the brief principles and see what do they mean. But what I would like to do, I would like to show you how the brief principles work through a concrete example. And in this case, the concrete example will be to fix an existing badly written scenario. And you will see then the difference, how the things will look like if you are applying the principles or not. So hopefully that way it will be easier to understand what they really mean. And when I would like to fix a BDD scenario, then I would like to again refer that in many cases the BDD initiative comes from the QA department, and the QA people or the testers already have many test cases typically at the time when they introduce BDD. And for the first look, it would be a good idea to just take the existing test cases and simply port them to BDD scenarios. But unfortunately, this is in many of the cases, this is not a working strategy. And I would like to first highlight why this is not, what are the problems with this kind of approach. And to be able to understand the problem, let's just quickly compare the BDD scenarios versus the manual regression test, or BDD versus manual regression testing. Obviously, there are similarities, but also there are key differences as well that make this typical translation of manual test cases to scenarios almost impossible. So let's start with the similarities, because I think that's how the motivation really starts. So typically both of them are targeting the functional quality. So they are both describing how the system should behave and trying to verify that. Both way of testing is some sort of prescribed way of testing, so scripted. So you upfront decide what you want to check, and this is what you will execute at the end. So both of them are really working like that, and both of them can be used to catch regression issues. I think in long term that's the main purpose of both kind of testing, and for both, you will need to perform multiple different actions on the system on the test to be able to verify whether it works correctly or incorrectly. However, there are unfortunately also some key differences as well. And the key differences can be probably the best seen from the costing and from the verification point of view. So I don't know if you were ever thinking about the cost factors of the different kinds of tests, but if you would do, then you would see that that for manual tests, typically the highest cost factor is the human execution cost, that somebody needs to sit down and they need to redo that test multiple times, basically every time when we would like to make a regression verification. On the other hand, for automated tests, the execution time is not free, because of course you have to reserve a server and whatever, but that definitely this is not the highest cost factor. The highest cost factor is to implement that kind of automated test and maintain those tests. Probably the maintenance is even more important than the implementation itself. The verification options are also very different. For manual tests, typically a human that is doing some activities is good for checking as many things as they see. So if I'm just going through a user journey, I can check at least 50 different things while I was doing that without even noticing that. On the other hand, automated BDD tests are basically only good for checking only one thing. Actually, if it finds a problem, then it anyway stops in the majority of the cases. So that's these are the core differences, so that the cost factors are different and the verifications options are different. And basically, as a consequence of these two key difference, is that that at the end the testing flow will be different. So for manual tests, typically you need to have a longer user journey that the manual tester can go through and check many things. While for automated BDD scenarios or BDD automated testing in general, it might make sense to have multiple smaller focused tests that are only checking a particular business rule and have many of them. So because of these differences, typically that transcribing a manual test into a scenario is typically not a good idea. And this is how my example scenario was actually born. Hopefully you are not able to read that because it's too small font. And anyway, my insurance doesn't cover any kind of injuries caused by seeing very bad scenarios, so don't look at that in detail. But definitely what you can see, that this is a long test script. It looks like that it is a scenario because it uses the give and then keywords, but definitely this is not a BDD scenario. It's just basically a test script written using the BDD keywords. That's what we can say. Again, our goal is to document the requirements and get feedback from them, from the business, whether they are happy with those requirements, or if there is any change, how much they are contradicting. And therefore, unfortunately, this kind of test scripts are not really helping with that. So that's not a good approach. But let's try to fix this. Let's try to fix this very ugly scenario. And by fixing, we can learn about the brief principles. And now this is the first time when I can finally show what these brief principles really mean. So this is a mnemonic which is basically taken from the initials of the 5 principle, and actually briefness is the 6th one. That makes sense. So B stands for business language, R stands for real data, I stands for intention revealing, E stands for essential, and F stands for focused. And basically what I would like to do, I would like to go through this scenario, this long scenario, and always take one particular principle, not exactly in this order, and try to fix that particular aspect of that. And by that, you will learn what that really means. Let's start with the first one, the business language. So basically, whenever we would like to rewrite or consider this for the business language, we can look at the sentences. And unfortunately, the language that this scenario is currently using is not business language. Navigating to URL, waiting for some time, or clicking on a button, that's browser interaction. That's not the language that our business is really talking. And if you would like to rephrase this thing to the business language, unfortunately, we have to make the hard work of analyzing this scenario and see and try to understand what we originally wanted to describe with these steps. So let's do a couple of steps like that. So maybe first I just highlighted the first 2 steps: navigate to this URL and wait until the home becomes visible. What we really wanted to say probably is that what happens when the user is checking, or when I check the home page. Okay, this was the way to describe that. We need to navigate to URL and wait until it's really loaded, but that's what we wanted to do. Then we have a then step. Then the browser title is this. So probably that whether it's a browser title or a mobile app title, that's not really important. But what we really wanted to say with that the title should be, doesn't matter whether it's a browser or whatever else, is the Spec Flow Overflow Home. We don't know really why this was important for us right now, but actually that's what we wanted to somehow verify. And then we can go further. I just highlighted these 2 lines, but actually there are a couple of more that I was skipping here. So you can imagine a proper login thing, which is actually just ensuring that you have logged in. And you can also then select this big section, which is, if you would go through that very much in detail, actually it's just going to the ask question page, just types in some question details and title, whatever text. So basically what it does it is saying that when I ask the new question with test question 1, 2, 3 as a title, with some details as a body, and with some tags that you are seeing there. This is what we really wanted to do, and of course we could go through the rest of the scenario. I will stop here. Probably you started to get the point. So basically, what we did now, we have rewritten the technical language into some business language to be able to better work with. So now what you see on the screen is the fixed version, at least from this perspective. So right now the scenario has been fully refactored to use the business language. Of course, this is not ready yet, but at least we have applied already one principle, the business language principle. And as you can see, immediately the scenario got much shorter and probably easier to read already. But we will not stop here. We will move on with the next principle, with the focus principle. The focus principle really means is that we would need to identify what kind of business rules this scenario is verifying. Because we said that ideally every scenario should only support one business rule. And maybe this one is supporting multiple, we don't know yet. But if we analyze that, and particularly where we analyze what kind of rules it is basically verifying, then we can look at the then steps. Typically, the then steps are the ones that are verifying the results. So typically, the then steps are the ones that are showing that we are doing some sort of verification. And as you can see here, we have altogether 5 then steps, but we have 4 then step groups, so to say. So my first guess would be that actually probably this scenario is supporting 4 different business rules, and not a single one, which is not a good thing. So it looks like that this scenario is definitely not focused. For the first look, maybe it doesn't sound that bad that one scenario is supporting multiple business rules, but unfortunately, these multi-rule, multi-purpose scenarios are typically causing bottleneck in your development process. So don't want to go too much into the details. Maybe in the Q&A we can also come back to that. But no one will be able to take care. It will be very hard to put it into the right place. It will be very hard to find the ownership for those kind of scenarios. So they are really causing a lot of trouble also with the automation. So small and focused scenarios are definitely much better. So what can we do? So if our scenario is really supporting multiple verification of multiple business rules, then basically what we would need to do is we would need to split them into multiple smaller ones. So typically the process would be that we are just going through then group by then group. So maybe we can just start with the first one. The first one says that the title should be Stack Overflow Home. At this point, probably it will be very hard to remember why this was important for us. So probably you would need to go back to the product owner or the business analyst and ask them, okay, I see that we are verifying whether the title is this and this, but why was that important? What was the rule behind that we wanted to figure out? And hopefully, with a lot of sweat and tears, probably would realize that what we really wanted to verify with that is the application homepage should be identifiable. That's why we wanted to have this verification there. Maybe you have a better take. That could be one option. Again, now we could move on to the next one. The next one, as you see, is showing or verifying whether the homepage is somehow activated and the question that you just asked is appearing on that homepage. Probably the rule behind that was that new questions should be added to what we wanted to ensure. So now we have separated all the necessary things for that to be able to do and create a new scenario. The last one is when you are just going to the question details page and you see the question. Probably the rule behind was that the details of the question can be accessed from the question list. These are the steps that were required for that. So as part of this focus principle, what we did, we just split this big scenario into multiple smaller ones, and now every scenario is only verifying single business rule. Typically, they have a few then steps. Therefore, maybe you need to have 2 then steps to be able to express that, but definitely not much more. after the focus principle, we can think about the intention revealing principle. This concrete example is not that exciting for that, so there are not so much of intention revealing problems here. But I highlighted the two things that could be considered, especially the second one. So whenever you think about the intention revealing, you should always think about that you should not focusing on it, how you have achieved that, but you should rather phrase what you wanted to achieve. So instead of the mechanical steps, you should rather focus on the intention. And if you look at this, this highlighted area on the lower scenario, you see that what we say is that we have logged in and we have added a question with, but actually what we really wanted to express is that that there is a question added with. So we don't care whether you logged in or you imported it or however it gets into the system. That's not important for us right now. The only important thing is that we have a question that is already in the system. So that's how we can more focus on the intention revealing thing. And given I have logged in, maybe what we really wanted to say is that there should be an authenticated user. One way of that would be to express it with a Gherkin tag. We don't necessarily even need a step for that. But again, we just highlighted what we really wanted to have. Okay, so so now we have applied the business language, the focus, and the intention revealing principle. But if you look at these scenarios, you will still see that there are a couple of unnecessary details in there. So if you think about this scenario, which is checking that new questions should be added to the question list, actually in this particular scenario, the question what the body and what the tags were are absolutely unimportant. They are not actually verified in the dance tab. Doesn't matter what you write there, it will anyway work. So actually in this form, in the scenario, they are more causing just a noise than really help. Again, this might be a little bit contradicting if you were coming from the testing space, because generally we think that the more details mean more clarity, but it's rather the opposite. So unnecessary and unimportant or irrelevant details are usually causing more confusion, because people will ask that, okay, why was it important that it has that particular tag? Is it only working if I had a Gherkin tag on there, or does it work anyway? Yeah, fixing that is easy. Of course, you just need to remove these details from the scenario and put it down to the automation layer, where it can fill it with some useful default values if the particular field was mandatory. So now we have fixed that details, and now it's going to be looking nicer. The only remaining principle that we haven't seen is the real data. Here our scenarios we're anyway using real data in some way, so that's already pretty good. But we can still look at the data that we were using here. So for example, we can see that we were asking a test question 1, 2, 3, which is definitely a concrete data, but definitely not realistic data. Of course, it's a question of taste and a question of discussion. But typically, if you are using more realistic data, then it will be much easier to have some conversations on that. It will be much easier to imagine what kind of questions people are asking. That typically there is a question mark at the end, whatever else a question might have. Generally, we can say that a concrete piece of real data is very good for illustrating what we want, and of course how concrete it should be. That's always a question, but definitely this is something that makes sense to consider. So now we have applied all 5 principles, and actually what was dropping out at the end, we have created multiple scenarios, and as you can see, these scenarios are not only supporting these 5 principles, but they are also brief themselves. So it's much easier to understand them. It's much easier to ask the business for some review. It's much easier to discuss any details based on that. So now we have cleaned this scenario. So to wrap this up, basically what we have seen the use of the 6 brief principles, the 6 brief principles of good scenarios. We have seen that the business language, where we say that the business terminology is helping this cost cross-discipline collaboration, helps you to discuss with each about the requirements. We said that we would like to have real data because, again, this is helping to reveal assumptions, edge cases, whatsoever. We'd like to have intentional revealing scenarios, so which are describing the expectation and not the mechanical steps, how we achieve that. We would like to have the essential details only and remove all the other noise that is not really important to illustrate the outcome. And we would like to have the scenarios focusing on a single business rule, so they should be focused. And at the end, having the scenarios brief means shorter and easier to read are definitely helpful because it is going to be easier to maintain at the end. Okay, so that were the 6 brief principles of good scenarios. I think we are just good in timing, so let's just wrap it up, and then we can open the Q&A. If you have questions, feel free to start preparing that. So basically, we have, as a wrap-up, we can say that we have seen these 4 topics that we addressed in the today's session. So we have seen a brief summary about the BDD process. We were looking into the details what this formulation activity or this formulation process or practice looks like. We were highlighting that formulation is typically much different from test writing or test transcribing, and that's a very key difference. And not taking care of that difference is causing many of the problems in the BDD adaptation. And by fixing that bad BDD scenario, is basically helping us to learn about the brief principles. So the key facts that you should probably take home with you from that session are these. So that formulation is something which is used to document the examples and make them ready for automation. That scenario should be connected to business rules, and they should follow the brief principles: business language, real data, intentional revealing, essential, focused, and brief. So that was my presentation for today. Thank you very much. And we are opening up the QA session. Before doing that, I just want to highlight that I regularly have BDD and SpecFlow related courses. The next one is going to be just next Monday. So if you can really make a quick decision and would like to come next week to my courses, definitely contact me. You see my email address there, and I'm happy to give you a 20% coupon for the course next week. But you can see my other course options in the URL that you see on the page. Yeah, and I'm ready for the questions.
Yeah, thanks for that, Gáspár. Very informative. I myself just sat back and take it in, music to the ears. Yeah, we have a few questions here for you coming out. The first one, the one to know is, can we have and multiple conditions in given when and then?
So generally, yes. So that if you typically the BDD scenarios are composed of different context-related statements, actions, and outcome, and especially the context. Typically, to set up the preconditions for a complex scenario, you need to have multiple different statements to do that. Technically or logically, they are all given steps. They are all part of the context or the precondition, but it just reads nicer if you are using the and keyword, because it will really read as a sentence. The same happens with the then steps. So if you want to have if you want to describe a complex assertion, then maybe it doesn't fit into a single line, and you want to combine it with multiple then steps with the end. Maybe the only exception is the when step, because actually, if the scenario is focused, then anyway, you should only do one thing to be able to trigger that. So I think in good scenarios, you should have only one when step, but technically, the Gherkin syntax would allow you to also use and after the when as well, but I just don't recommend you to do that. So that works. There is another keyword called but, working similarly to the end, but very important that, for example, there is no or. Because if you would have an or keyword, that would basically not having one test, but basically a junction, because and a Cucumber wouldn't know whether it should go this way or that way. So that kind of things cannot be expressed, but and works, yes, for given and then as well.
Thanks for that, Barry. That's cool. And we have a few for you. So let's see if we can get them out with. I see we ran out of time. We have like 6 minutes. Let's see if we can get you them. They're asking here: is BDD still a good choice if business is not writing the requirements? For example, the development team decides what they deliver and write their own requirements.
Yeah, so that's a hard question, because obviously the full benefits of BDD is really coming out if the business is also participating. So that's clear. However, and I've seen this in many companies, that sometimes just starting BDD by the dev team, so that at least for yourself you are describing how you understood the requirements, and at least for yourself you are protecting your code with those scenarios, and then slowly teaching the business that these things might have value for them as well. That's an absolutely good strategy. And so I would say that this is not a good end point, but it can be a good starting point for extending it to the business. Because just saying that, hey, business, there is a good thing called BDD from tomorrow on, let's use it, that's not very convincing. However, if you can show them that these are the scenarios that we have written for the feature that we developed last week, how much value you can see on that, that's a much better conversation, and you can get a much better result probably from that.
Yeah, I agree with that. And in saying that, most times, the QA team does write features for BDD, and sometimes it's become harder for writing the business languages. How do you view that?
Definitely you have to be careful, because if you just don't think about the business language, then it's very easy to fall into the solution language. That's usually how our way of thinking works. That we like to think in solutions and forget about the problem space. What I usually do, that even if that's the setup, so maybe only the QA team is doing that, then I would recommend you to do it in a work of a pair. Just find the buddy for yourself and just make an agreement that, okay, I will focus on the solution, you should focus on the problem domain, and let's write that together in a way that we're really happy about that, because it describes what we wanted to verify, but it really describes it in a way that how the business would be able to understand that if you would be able to show it to them.
Okay. Yeah, I have one here from. Oh, I'm not even sure who it's from, but it's really interesting. They ask. I really often hear that using BDD only for automation testing framework is not a great idea. But honestly, I don't see a better way to make it clear for everyone in a team what tests are actually tests and present this data in a beautiful report.
That's a very good statement. So BDD is not a silver bullet. So it's not something that you do BDD and everything will be super cool and perfect. And even BDD is developing. So through these years, it was even sometimes changing a little bit the not the direction, but at least the focus. So the desire to have this cleanness that the question maker was saying is the important thing. And of course, you have to find what is the best tool for you right now to have this cleanness and understandability of the test. And I think in many cases, BDD is definitely a very good choice for that. And there are not many other good alternatives. Let's say it like that.
And finally, before we wrap it up, we have one last one for you. Is so what are the best practices if you have a multiple user scenario? For example, a chat conversation between user 1 and user 2. Should we avoid scenarios with I?
Definitely. So these I kind of scenarios are more for learning BDD. That's what my usual suggestion is, that of course, when you learn about BDD, it's easier to say that I do this, I do that, I do that. But in a real project where you really have multiple kinds of users, the eye will not work very quickly, and because you will have different roles, you will different scenarios that are describing interaction between different roles. So basically, in real project, what I suggest is that right from the beginning, go to some third-person view format. So the client does that, or the user does that, or something like that. Some teams are even using personas, UX personas. If you anyway have them, of course, you can also put them into the scenario. But definitely in real project, I wouldn't use the eye. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much for that, and again, thanks for taking the time out to sharing that with us. The good people at Zoom, they made it available so that everybody could see this. So
Perfect. Thank you very much for the
again.
invitation. Okay, see you.
Okay, cheers. And as we, without a long delay, I would like to now bring in Larissa. I won't try to pronounce her surname at the moment. She'll do that for herself when she comes in. To bring her in. Hi, Larissa. Yeah. So without further ado, Larissa, just again, Larissa talk is on building a quality engineering charter. The pitfalls to avoid and the best practices to follow. So, Larissa, it's all yours.
Thank you very much. Let me just share my screen. Hold on a little bit. Well, I'm just a little lost here. Hold on. Woo! I can't believe it just lost here. Woo. Okay, let me here. Okay. Let us see. Share.
Are we having a little bit of technical difficulties?
Yeah, I just share. I think you need to put here, or is it me?
Yep.
Oh, great.
Yeah, you're good now.
Great.
So, without
Okay,
further ado, everyone, there's Larissa.
Sorry, everyone. So, thank you for having me. So, today we are going to talk not as much as automation, but how to build a community, a quality engineering chapter. So, what we are going to discuss here, it's a little bit about uh, what is a chapter, how we can create a quality engineering chapter, but most of all, some best practices to follow, pitfalls to avoid, and I will share a little bit about my experience in creating one chapter during the pandemic. So let me start talking a little bit about myself. So I am a senior manager. I work today at CINT. CINT is a digital transformation company, and I'm also a strategist. I love design thinking, and I want and quality is one of my first um, child. I know quality before I had any kids, and I am an innovator. I love testing, and I love to bring value to the customer with lean and also digital transformation. I am a speaker. I speak international conferences and also international conferences in agile engineering with how to bring quality into this agile world is really interesting. I have more than 20 years in experience. I used to be the head of the Brazil test services in Brazil at IBM, and I start to play a little bit with intelligent automation, RPA, and cognitive at Avanet. And I have my two kids here, Arthur and Isadora. They are teenagers. I love dogs, so I have 19 dogs, 18 chihuahuas, and my husband he's also into this QA word, DevOps and QA. So we talk a lot together into several places. And so let's start a little bit with what I'm here to talk about. What is this chapter? So what is chapter? Why do we would need this chapter? So when you are into a company, when you are into an organization that really is organized into an agile way, so they organize themselves in tribes, in squads, and they are really self-organized, they are independent, and they are organized in a way to deliver the best product for their client. So they all work independently, they are multifunctioning, and they all work towards the best product for their customer, their client, and they are focused on this. But how we can share all the knowledge, all the learnings, all the experiments that all of those tribes are doing, if all of these tribes they are independent and multidisciplinary. So this is something that I have faced. So I joined this huge contract, and we have all these teams working, and each one was doing everything so marvelous about QA, and knowing the tools and doing several experiments with quality, but they were doing independently. So how we were able to do this? How the teams would know what was going on? And this was something that we were considering and we were thinking. And that is where we have this thing, this tool, this instrument that can really help us is the chapter or communities or guilds. So when we think about safe concepts, we talk about chapters if we are inside the same value streams. But if we are cross value streams, then we talk about guilds. So what is this chapter? The chapter is a community of people that works in the same domain for the same company or the same contract, and they are interested in the same issues. So in the same interests, in the same things and issues and things and the same relationships, and it could be tools, could be anything. So we can create chapters, we can create communities about anything. We can choose whatever we want to create the chapters, the communities. N- Here I'm talking about the chapters for quality engineering, but it's really important for all of us to understand that the chapter of practice, the community of practice, they can be built for anything. So we can build a chapter for quality engineering. We can build a chapter for automation. We can build a practice for architecture, for project managers, for agile. We can build a chapter for anything that is relevant for our company, for our organization, that will enhance, that will improve our team and our experience as engineers, as technologists. This is really important. So the chapters, the communities, they come together to bring us, to help us, to share all the knowledge, all the experiments, all the issues we face into our daily activities. And also, we are able to understand that maybe the issue I'm facing in my project is the same issue that the other squad is facing into another in their project, and they already solved this with some tool or with some other framework, and they have the best practice to implement this, and we can share this knowledge, and we can use this as an accelerator, and we can use this to improve our engineering experience to work together. So the chapter, the community is really important for us and will help us to improve our daily to daily sense of belonging and also our well being. So, but what is it for? So as I told you, the chapter will how is it working? So we do this by recurring meetings to exchange information and experiences. We do this by sharing the lessons learned, and we are able to make fearless mistakes and learn fast. This is really, really important because we create a safe environment where we can be able to make mistakes, to share our mistakes, and to help each other into this community of practice. This is one of the most important things here. Also to generate a sense of belonging and community. So one of the issues that I noticed is that we had in our squad five, six developers and one QA. And in another squad, the same thing. And most of the times, my quality engineering, he felt alone. He didn't feel as he belonged. So when we created this chapter for all the quality engineering, talking about quality, talking about stealing the quality, the built-in quality mindset into the teams, and also assisting the developers, assisting the architects with the quality, bringing the whole team based approach into the squads, they start to feel like they were part of something else, not only part of this minor part of the squad, but part of the bigger picture of the quality of the product, of the quality of the company. And their work was better. They start to feel better about themselves and their job as well. One other thing, many heads are better than one. So they think better. So we were able to find better solutions for any given issue. So, for example, we had some framework that was not good, or we have someone else using a Spock framework that was really good and we're able to implement it. So this was really good, and we start to share ideas and we start to work with some problems that one team had, and everyone was thinking together. And it we had a unique and safe place for exchanges, for questions, and transparency. So we create this community, we create this safe place for everyone to be able to share their experiences. And how we can start with this? First of all, when is to get the feedback. So understand uh, why do we need this chapter? Why do we need this community? And identify the need of the community. So, do I really need the community? Why? After I understand, get the feedback, and understand the need of the community, I need to start to understand who will be the possible members. So, for my chapter, who will be the members? What roles will be the members? And after these roles, I will get the roles. And how will I find the person that has those roles? So I start to identify the possible members. After I know what my community needs and who will be part of this community, I will organize the first meeting. I will think about a catch name for the community. Or even better, I will get this group with some fake name and say, let us do a contest for a name for the community. Let's do a contest for a logo for the community, for a mascot for the community, to engage the people for this community, for this chapter. Think about the goals of the community. What do we want to achieve as a community? Do we want to share, only to share the learnings? We want to bring innovation from the market. We want to help everyone else. We want to increase, to improve their skills. We want to do some dojos. So think about the goals of the community. Establish a communication channel. Where would be this channel be? Will be Slack, will be a chat, where? And establish this communication channel and publish this communication channel. Invite other people for the community. Make mouth to mouth publicly. Make also the be bring the community to everyone. So make it possible to everyone, invite everyone. The community is for everyone, not only for one administrator. Everyone is part of the community and everyone runs the community itself. Prepare the first team for the community to run, then put this into the community backlog. So prepare the first team and have some teams for the next meetings as the backlog, and have this in hand, and get to know the people that will be part of the community, their issues, what is going on, and meet again. Community is all about the people. This is really, really, really important. And be aware. What are the issues you may found? What are the pitfalls you may found that probably you will find some issues with it, and you see that your community won't start correctly. So you may not find the right people as members. You may not understand the need of the community before created. So if you don't identify correctly what is the need of the community before you created, people won't be interested about it. So it's really important that you understand why you need this community, why you need this chapter before you create it. We can't just go creating chapters just because people need the community and needs to understand what they are going to have from this community, what is the value from the community. So why is so this is why it's so important for us to really understand the pain point of our people before starting to create the community, to understand what are the goals, and to to have decentralized place to share the communication. If you don't have decentralized place, people won't be able to know where to look for information. And I'm not talking only about the channel. The channel is really important, but also a folder where you can put all the files, the information that you already will share with the people and will be there for later reference. Be diverse and inclusive. So everyone is invited. Everyone can invite everyone. So this is really important. And always be open to feedback and always evolve as a community. If you see and if you understand that something is not working, you fail fast and you learn from it and we do continuous improvement over and over and over again. So I'm going to talk about this success case. This was really interesting because we did this during the pandemic, and it was completely virtual. So it was, as I told you, I start into this project, this huge contract. We were like 200 people working for the same customer, and we were 10 tribes 10 tribes and 30 squads working. And when I joined the team, and I always love it a lot, quality. And what I start to see is that we had several ways to make the testing strategy. So I start to talk to one QA, and then other QA, and then scrum master, squad leader, a senior manager, and I understand that we didn't have a standardized way to make a testing strategy, and the test concepts. For example, the test pyramid, what is integration testing, what is component testing, these concepts, the role of the QA within the squad, they were not consistent, they were not standardized, and the QAs were feeling really alone, and they weren't feeling part of this bigger whole, and they didn't have a purpose. They were just there, and most of sometimes they weren't part of the planning, or they were like, you need to do end-to-end automation testing, or you do all manual testing, so they were a little bit lost sometimes. And so this huge customer we had several acceleration tools, such as test data management tools, automation frameworks, environments, virtualization tools, and they didn't know the tools and accelerators at their disposal. Some tribes know a little bit, some other know another part. Some were using here, one using there, one was using one framework, one was using other framework, and it was all sparse, all divided, all a little bit fire everywhere. And we had several same efforts into several tribes. So people were doing duplicated efforts everywhere. And also they didn't understand what they were and how quality efforts were organized. So first of all, what I did was I launched a form to understand who, what they were doing as quality. So I did this using Google Forms for everyone, all the tribes, all the squads, for all the architects and developers and QAs, to understand what types of testing they were doing, where they were doing, what types of tools they were doing, just to get a little grasp of the pain points they were having in terms of the and what tools they were using, etc., etc. And then with this research, qualitative and quantitative research, we start to understand a little bit better the pain points as well. So I was able to kind of understand, and I talk a lot with several people from several tribes. So I start to pull a little bit from here, pull a little bit from there. I start to understand what was going on from several places. And while I was doing this, I also start to identify some people that were really in love and had a lot of passion for the subject, and wanted to help me with this, with to bring knowledge, or to share knowledge to everyone. So after we were able to understand our community, because what I was doing is really to understand our community. So I understand what the community needs. I understand what would be the goals for the community. I was able to understand the pain points, and I get also, I try to understand the people that could be the strategic persons in some of the tribes to help me to bring others into the game. And get I was able to get some teams already that was interesting for us to start with. For example, test concepts, test pyramid. This was our first team to standardize, to normalize the knowledge between all of us. So this was really important. After this, I say, okay, so how can we start? So I open a channel that we call strategic squad, with this some people that were really interesting in making this happen. We were a lot of teams, as I told you, so I needed to get help. I wasn't able to do this alone. No one is able to do anything alone, so I get help from a lot of people, and we got together and I say, okay, so what we are going to do, are we going to do just with QAs? And they say, no, we need the architects and we need some devs with us as well. So I talked to human resources and I asked to from them the help for everyone that has the role for a tester, for a quality assurance, and also the architect. So we create this channel, this big channel with all the list for all the quality assurance and architects. And we create the channel and we publish it. The first message saying, welcome, we invited you all. This is a channel that we want to share all of experience for all the quality efforts, all the testing and quality efforts for our customer. So we put the name as quality engineering, the name of the customer, and then the first message, the pinned message, was just to say the objective of the channel, saying, okay, here is what we intend to do. This is what is this chapter about. And we use it in a boost of referrals. So mouth to mouth was of great importance, and because we had new QAs entering every time. So we allow everyone to invite everyone. So the QAs were able to invite other QAs. The architects invited other architects. We had the leadership, the senior managers being invited as well, because we noticed that sometimes leadership didn't understand testing and quality the way they should, and they couldn't defend our the quality the way it should be done. So the QAs refer other QAs, and they would refer the other roles, and we got momentum, a lot of momentum, because people were really excited to have a common place to share problems, to share solutions, and to share what was going on between them. So it was really interesting because people were really engaged and they were really interesting to have a common place to share experiences about it. So with the list of the QAs and architects with the human resources, and we put the chat name customer quality engineering, we gave autonomy for the members to add more members. We put the purpose of the chapter published in the chat, and also we asked for the feedback. So into the chat we did the poll, what do we want to see here? And then we actively listen for the members, and we start to listen and to bring something as well. and always with transparent communication. So we did the dissemination of meetings, ideas, experiences, and feedback, and retro feedback as well. So we start to put the meetings, we start to talk. What do you think we should bring here? What are the topics you think is the most important for you guys? What are we going to do? Do you know this too? Do you want us to talk about this? What do you think about that? And then we will start to bring the people into the conversation. We would mark the people, and we start to talk with the people and bring people into the conversation. This was really, really important. So people would start to be part the of the community as well, and they would bring more ideas and more and more. So what we did in the first meeting, we scheduled with the test pyramid, and we did the dissemination of the first meeting in all online communication channels. So not only in the channel for the chapter, but for the common channel for all the customer, and the leadership channel, and all the channels that we had. We published that the meeting would start. So we had some people that were not in the channel already, and they saw the meeting and they enter and they like it and they start to go there. And also what we did was to put the recording to watch later and be more inclusive. And all the recordings for all the meetings we would store into that folder for later reference. And also the materials that we would put there, we put as later reference as well. And the first meeting was an alignment on QA concepts. And what for us we found was the biggest pain point of all was the role of the QA. So it was really important for us, and for us to have the architects and devs as well, was to align that the QA was the keeper of quality, the keeper of the business, but he was not the one that would ensure quality, because quality is a whole based team approach. So he would help developers, he would help with the strategy, he would help to implement the testing strategy, but he would not ensure to have the quality. So we worked a lot with this along with the architects, and we have several meetings that the architects would present along with the quality engineering together. So we have both of them working together to have more power and a lot of experience exchange. So we would ask into this squad, into this tribe, how are you working? What is the concept you were using? How is the role? So we did a lot of experience exchange, and people we started to know each other. So this was really interesting because before the first meeting, before the chapter, people didn't know who were the QAs that were working into the contract, into this customer. So they started to know each other, they started to know each faces, and they started to reach out to each other. This was really, really interesting to see. They starting to reach out to each other, uh, off the channel, off the chapter, and to see how they start to make those connections and to work together as well. So what we were able to accomplish is that we were able to get 95 people part of the chapter, the QE chapter, among QA, architects, developers, and some leadership. So we don't have only QAs into this quality engineering chapter. We have all of the roles together. So we have exchanges about frameworks, we have a round table, we have some Spark conversations, how to generate an automated test pyramid, how to do unit testing, how to use test data management, how to use some accelerators. We had 12 different topics presented and shared with others, and all of these meetings, they were all recorded, and the materials were presented, and we had all of these 16 meetings all presented. And w- when new people were onboarded, they were referred to the folder, and they were there seeing the folder, and they would watch, and they will talk to us, also enter into the chapter, and will reach out to the people that create the material and presented the material, because it was not only one person presenting. Every tribe, every squad was presenting what they were doing, and to try to replicate into other squads. So they will reach out to them to ask more questions about this or about that topic. This was really interesting about this. So we were able to generate a lot of buzz, a lot of things because of this. So this was really interesting how we were able to create this momentum and keep that going. And what we learned with all of this, so we were able to understand that uh, it's really important for us to involve everyone, not only the QAs. If we had involved only the QAs, the conversations we had weren't going to be as rich as they were. This is really important, because when we were able to bring the architects, the developers, and leadership as well, we were able to have a much more richer conversation. The architects were a fundamental piece for the chapter, for the quality engineering chapter to work. And they were also the many times the the pillar that helped to implemented several learnings that we had into the other tribes. Without them, many of the learnings that we had, that we have shared, will not be implemented into other tribes. And advertise, and advertise it. We needed to advertise it a lot. So to be able to advertise the chapter, and to keep the momentum going, and also to get new topics, to get new teams. So many times we had a Trello, and we did with the Trello to get this backlog of teams, and to always keep asking the community what other teams do you want to bring, and also to research new topics, new teams into the market as well, to bring innovation. Many times when we are working to the customer, we are so with so many things to do, uh, with so many wrap up into us, that we are unable to look for new things into the market. So it's really worthwhile for us to stop, to breathe, and to oxygenate a little bit, to receive new ideas, new tools, new things that exist out there, that can bring new ideas and new ways of doing things. Collect the greatest pain points and questions, and set up the first meetings about these topics. This is one of the most important things. The first meetings need to address the biggest, the greatest pain points your community have, the greatest questions your community has. You need to address those in the first meeting. You need to help your community the biggest way possible. You need to impact them in the first meeting, and then continue, continue, and continue impacting them. Find engaged people who want to help on the chapter. We cannot do this by ourselves. We can't do this alone. We need to find engaged people, and always have engaged people. So find those people and use those people as leverage. Use those people to help us to advertise and to bring this chapter to a whole new level. And also add the topics to the backlog and organize it visually. Use Trello, use whatever tool you want, use post-its into the wall, really don't matter, but use this to organize yourself and your people in order to be able to see what you need to do and what are the greatest topics you need to go. Keep the chapter alive with relevant topics and interesting chat discussions. Ask all and do it once weekly. Always continue doing. Ask powerful, thought-provoking questions and keep the conversation going. Always keep the conversation going. It's really many times it's easy to start a chapter, but it's way more challenging to keep the momentum going. Don't let our works, don't let the hurry of the day to distract yourself from this. This is to keep this chapter going, to keep the community going, is one of the things that is most rewarding for the community and for the improving to 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 improve your morale of the team. It's really important to keep the momentum going and do not let yourself away from this. So always go back to this. Encourage new people to share new topics, to share experiences, to share the learnings. And also find a way to reward the people, and it doesn't need to be money, but reward them with the knowledge, reward the people. Pub, uh, do meetups with the community, do hackathons, do testathons, but do the things and reward the people that are sharing the most with the community, with the chapter as well. And always encourage people publicly. So you always say thanks to this, thanks to Maria that helped me, thanks to John that helps me. This is really important. So the community, the chapter, many times looks like this is really a lot of work, and maybe a lot of work, but it's really important for the work, for the people, and for the efficiency and for the quality of the work. Everyone will feel better when we do this. And this is what I had in the terms the of this for to building a chapter, to build the quality engineering chapter. And I thank you a lot. So if you have any questions, we can enter into the questions.
Yeah, thanks, Larissa, for that. Thank you very much. And no, I'm wondering. I mean, from the whole building of chapters and stuff, what advice you have for somebody who wants to actually build their own in that sense, to get it out there. What do you say to them?
I'm sorry, could you repeat?
I'm saying, what advice you would have for someone who, listen to you and now they want to go out there and build their own chapter, what advice would you have for them?
Yeah, first of all, I would say understand your community, understand your people. what do they need? Why do you need a chapter? So I think this is the most important thing. Why do you need a chapter, and what do you want to accomplish from this chapter? This is the first. And after this, identify the people, you identify who will be the members, and just start the chapter. Start to get a place to meet, a channel or anything that is instant messenger, and start the chapter. But first of all, it's fundamental to understand what are the goals you want to accomplish with the chapter, and why do you want to build the chapter. Because if you just start the chapter because just because it's fun, it's nice, you don't know what you want to achieve with it. So
Okay, I mean, and also, so somebody like myself, I say, oh, I know I'm a member of this, this body and this body. You know, I think what I'm trying to find out here now is if we have so many bits going on, with this here MOT and all these people, and you're part of them, why would you now want to go and build your own?
yeah, so when I decided to start my chapter, it's because we didn't have anything similar for this. So if you have already some chapter or some community in order you can exchange, I really don't think you need to start one. You need to take leverage of what you have. As if you have somewhere where you can share, because the chapter exists so you can share the knowledge and you can share the experiences. So this is the complete existence, the complete goal of the chapter. So you are able to, so people with the same interests, people with the same domain are able to share their learnings and to share their findings and to share their troubles, their issues, their problems, and to be able to solve them together. So if you already have some place where you can do this, go ahead and do this and be part of this chapter and be happy with this chapter and assisting to this chapter. But if you think that the place you are part of this, it's not okay for you, and you want to build something that is more suitable for you, go ahead and do it. But do it with the sense that you are going to build something that is for your company or your project or your customer, that is customized for this public, for this specific public, that will have the same issues that you need to understand this specific word, and then you go ahead and you create it.
Yeah, that's lovely advice. I have one more question for you, and it's to do with you specifically. I mean, I see you operated in this space. You're a service man, the senior manager for lean digital transformation, and I was wondering how does building a chapter and still working with, let's call it, the general public, and still working with the general public, how do you mesh them together, and how do you split your time in between it, and if there is any, yeah, any falls in there?
Yes. So I find people to help me. This was really key because I wasn't able to do this by myself. So and this is something really important for you, is you find people to assist you. I had this idea and I thought the idea was great, and I said, okay, we will be able to do it, but we need I can do it alone. So I got some people to help me, and with that we were able to rotate many times. So okay, this week I won't be able to be there, can you do it for me? And we start to rotate the roles, so to keep the chapter going and to do our jobs that we need to do anyways. So we need to rotate.
Okay, then that was lovely. That was lovely. And here, I mean, after thank you for taking the time to put together this little presentation for us all. And on behalf of Zappeltech, I have to say thank you. Thank you so much for coming. And I know the audience appreciate it. And they're
Thank
much
you very
appreciated.
much.
Yeah, thank you. Um, so there you have it, folks. Our two great speakers, um, Gaspar, and I think he corrected me, but for the love of me, I don't think I can pronounce it correctly. But he gave us a nice insight into writing better BDD scenarios, and it was really helpful. Keep away from the long-winded stuff and make them precise and make them readable and understandable, not just by you, but by the business and all the developers and everybody else that needs to read it. And as the great Larissa just said, you know, it's all about knowledge sharing and the ability to pass on the knowledge that we have, to other people in the community is a great help because not only do you learn as the community, but we learn from you by the questions you would ask and things like that. You give us the ability to now have to go back and rethink some of the things that we do and say to see if it is actually still fit for business. So again, on behalf of um, Zappeltech, it was much appreciated having you all around, and again, a big thank you to Gaspar and Larissa. And thank you, and good afternoon, good morning, and good night to wherever you are in the world. Thank you.